now Reb Nosson continues, and he tells us that this is the depth of the halacha, again, that we've been discussing in previous messages as well, about waking up for chatzos, like the tzaddikim would every night, and every person, again, needs to take it into consideration how it fits with their own avodas Hashem. But if it's possible for a person to wake up, if not in the middle of the night, a little bit earlier, but a person should try to wake up while others are still sleeping, and it's more natural for them to be sleeping. It's a big madrega. And the reason is, like Reb Nosson writes over here, because if that's what nighttime represents, that nighttime represents this falling below our standard consciousness of Emunah, falling into a place where we're not able to see Hashem's presence, falling into a place, into a state where the sunlight of that brilliant, shining glory of Hashem is revealed, and we fall into a place where the tumah, the impurity of that amalek, of that focus on our own potential, our own capacities, that's resting on our hands, that all the while that's what night represents. So then if a person is able to wake up, it's like they're breaking the nighttime. It's like they're rising in the middle of that experience of having sunken down into a lower state of consciousness. A person sets an alarm and they wake up in the middle of the night. And that is able to nullify that incredibly powerful force of nature from upon them, that incredibly powerful illusion that there's only nature and there's not Hashem in the world, chas v'shalom. And that's what a person is supposed to do. And that's why, says Reb Nosson, the primary essence of Yetzias Mitzrayim began at Chatzos. As the Psukim tell us, Kachatsos halayla ani yotz b'soich Mitzrayim, Hashem says, by Chatzos, that's when I'm going out among Egypt. And this is the depth of really what Geulah, like we had learned in the beginning of this particular part of the series, is really all about. That exile means, like Rabbi Nachman said, on the one hand, we're pained by the non-Jews, and we're persecuted, and we're hurt, and we're tormented, and that's painful enough. But the real pain is that we fall into seeing the world through their eyes. And that's what really causes us to feel that emotional pain, when we feel that there's no recourse, that there's no purpose, that there's chas v'shalom, no captain to this ship. And the meaninglessness, the absurdity of it all is what causes us the deepest anxiety and the deepest angst. And that's really what Mitzrayim is. And so in order to get out of the choshech of Mitzrayim, the erev ha'aretz, the tumah of Mitzrayim, the only way is, it's got to be chatzos. We have to wake up in the middle of that Egyptian night. We have to be able to shatter the stillness of that dark, dark, dark place. And then we're able to go out of Mitzrayim. And that shatters that aspect of exile, which all of the Galuyos, Chazal tell us, all of the subsequent exiles of the Jewish nation are called Mitzrayim, because they're all Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim means Egypt, but it could also mean to pain. And it could also mean to constrict. And all of our exiles have constricted and pained us a tremendous amount. And so in order to get out of Geulah, which is what this Geulah from Mitzrayim represents, it's got to be in the middle of the night. And that's connected to the idea of Chatzos. And what happened at Chatzos? We know, Makas B'charis. Zebechinas umeis kol b'char be'eretz Mitzrayim. The pasuk says, all of the b'char, all of the firstborn in the whole land of Israel are going to die. And in turn, in contrast, Hashem will step over, upasach Hashem will skip over the Hitzel B'chayri Yisrael, and Hashem will save the firstborn of Klal Yisrael. What's this concept of the firstborn of the Egyptians, which is representative of these forces of impurity, of Amalek, dying at that time? What's the depth of that? See, he says, because the firstborn is a concept always of Chachma. As the pasuk says, Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem. Chachma is associated with Reishis, with first. Because in the beginning of any person's creative process, the first thing they'll do is they'll have their master plan, right? They'll come up with what they want to do. They'll think about it. They'll plan it out first. So Chachma always is a symbol for first, and the first, more accurately, is always a symbol for Chachma. And that's what was happening over here. When we were able to have that aspect of waking up by Chatzos, in the middle of this nighttime, of this gullus, of this lack of consciousness, we needed to slaughter the aspect of Bechar. We needed to take care of that aspect of the firstborn, which again is a reference to Chachma, to make sure that we were able to get out of their way of seeing the world, which is the Chachma de Sitra Achra, the lack of Das, the lack of God consciousness, and we were able to connect to the Kedusha to the inherent holiness of Klal Yisrael's faith, and the way that we see the world is the energy of Geulah, which is the Kedusha of B'ni B'chayri Yisrael. Hashem says, my firstborn nation, the Jewish people, who are completely beyond nature and are completely unconstricted, irrespective of what the nations of the world want to have us believe, that we're just like everybody else. But the faith that really we're rooted in a much higher place. We're rooted in the place where Hashem told Abraham Avinu, go out from your astrology, meaning go out from being bound by nature. You're not bound by mazel. You're not bound by any of the stars and any of the other limitations. Even though Abraham Avinu was really incapable physically of having children, ultimately, in a much deeper way, Hashem says, you're not stuck. Klal Yisrael are beyond nature. We're rooted in a place of Geulah. We're rooted in a place of miracles. We're rooted in a place of wonder. We're rooted in a place of Eretz Yisrael, of the expansivity of Eretz Toiva Urechava. We're rooted in a place of wideness, not Mitzrayim, which is a place that's very constricted and limited, that makes us feel as if we're stuck. Klal Yisrael are rooted in a place that's beyond nature entirely. And that's why it says about Abraham Avinu, or Reb Nosson is telling us, becomes now the symbol for that which is beyond nature, because Hashem tells him to go out of his astrological limitations. About Abraham Avinu, it says when he was fighting in the war with the 5 kings against the 4 kings, and Abraham is battling the 4 kings, and it says, Vayachalok aleihem halayla, Vayachalik aleihem halayla. The night was split. And that's the aspect, again, of being able to split the nighttime, being able to break the darkness in the middle of the night, the aspect of tikkun chatzos, the aspect of being able to wake up and rise out of a lower state of consciousness, that it says by Avram fighting the 4 kings, that those 4 kings are connected to the 4 exiles that the Jewish nation has been in. And Abraham Avinu then, in a certain way on his level, slips below his madrega, and he asks Hashem by the bris bein absarim, how can I know that, promise me that we will get Eretz Yisrael, promise me that we will live in the consciousness of Geulah. And that itself, paradoxically, is an expression of Gullah's mentality, again on Avram's level, which is unfathomable to us, but Abraham Avinu is in some way saying, I need an assurance, prove it to me, let me figure it out, I need a proof. And Hashem says, well, what about Emunah? And as a result of that, that's why Klal Yisrael end up going down into Gullus, because it turns out that that's what Gullus is. Gullus is just the intensification of that kind of mistake, the Bama Eda, needing to know, needing to understand, needing to figure things out, needing to recognize that, it's under my control and my capacity to be able to understand it. And that's why the pasuk says by the bris bein absarim, v'tardeim nafla al Avram. Avram fell into a deep, deep sleep. Because in that moment when he was connected to the energy of Gullus, and that was the energy of Bama Eda, and he slipped below, as opposed to the Yachalik Aleim Alayla, where it says over there that they were able to split the nighttime and fight back the 4 kings, which is the 4 exiles. And he was able to connect to that Bechina that's beyond nature. But over here, he fell down into nature. You fell into the aspect of Gullus. And so what would you expect to find? You'd expect to find sleep, because that's exactly what sleep is. Sleep being the sinking down into a lower place, away from our consciousness, away from Emunah, away from light, into the dark, cold night of exile. And that's why right by the bris bein absarim it says, and Avram fell into a very deep sleep. And so the avodah is to wake up. The avodah is to recognize that, going back to the very beginning of this series, Ani Yeshena, even if some part of you is sleeping, but find the part of you that's v'libi er. Find the part of you that's still plugged into Emunah. Find the part of you that still wants to be holy. Find the part of you that's still holding on, and use that to make tikkun chatzos. That middle of the night that enables us to get out of Mitzrayim, that get out of Gullus, and to begin to live with the Geulah mindset of Eretz Yisrael, the Eretz Toiva Urechava, the land that's unbounded, the land that's unfettered, the land that's without limitations and boundaries, that enables us to really believe that anything is possible. We should be zocheh to this, be'ezus Hashem. Ashreinu ma'tov chakenu. Let's remember who we are. B'ni b'chayri Yisrael, the chachma and the das of Kedusha.
Ani haben v'ata ha'av sheli shekol kach ohev oti ha'av sheli melech chai v'kaya על כל נשימה שאני